There's 5 unexpected experiences you need in order to grow in your career.
And on today's episode, we're dropping some personal lore, talking about how those 5 experiences have impacted our careers.
Let's get into it. Kayla, before we drop some personal lore, question for you. Do I seem different to you?
I don't know. Did you get a haircut?
Well, yes, but that was weeks ago. You should have noticed. No, it's because I've been investing in my career by upskilling on Udemy.
Okay, but why would you seem different after using Udemy?
In just a couple of hours, the Better in 30 How to Own Your Career course broke everything down in a way that finally clicked. Job crafting, finding personal motivators, and what it means to truly own your career. Now I've got frameworks I can actually use at work, and with over 2,000 ratings, I know it's a course I can trust.
Makes sense. And that's the thing. Whether you're feeling stuck in your role, looking to pivot into something new, or just trying to keep pace with AI and constant change, Udemy gives you the structure and confidence to take control of your career.
Exactly. It's practical, real-world skills you can put into action right away, and you get to ask a real human questions, and you get an AI assistant, best of both worlds.
If you want to stand out too, check out udemy.com/personal-plan. That's udemy.com/personal-plan and use code PMLE14 at checkout for a free 14-day trial.
That's udemy.com/personal-plan, code PMLE14. Your next chapter starts here. Kayla, so we went to the lab.
We cooked.
And we were cooking up, and we wanted to do a special episode where we actually get into some personal lore about, how we were raised, our biggest insecurities.
Relationship with our parents.
Exactly. But we stumbled upon, I think, a really exciting episode because I get to learn, or we all get to learn a little bit more about you. I'll get to learn a little bit more about me. But we thought about what are these unexpected experiences we've had in our life that you would never have guessed helped us in our career, but actually did.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really powerful way to think about past experiences that you all have had and how you can maybe reframe them in terms of how they'll help you grow in your career, but also identify maybe some experiences you haven't had yet that if you do outside of work will help you grow professionally. So I'm really excited for this episode and excited to learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so we've got 5 that we've kind of ideated around. Basically, both of us have had similar kind of unexpected experiences. And I think the first one is one that feels pretty obvious perhaps, but let's get it out of the way, which is failure, right? Coming back from it, experiencing it. Have you failed?
I haven't failed, so I'm going to have to reference other people because I just haven't experienced.
Yeah.
No. Yes, I think this is a really common one, but really an important thing to think about in terms of reframing failures or downs you've had in your life and being able to distill out lessons. I think there's a framework called post-traumatic growth. And I think it's something that's really important to think about. So I would say biggest failure, at least in the moment in my life, was my freshman year of college. I grew up in Minnesota. Shout out to Minnesota, as you all know. And at that time, I was like, I need to get out of here. So I went to George Washington University in Washington, D.C. my freshman year. And it was unequivocally the hardest year of my life. When I moved there, I didn't know anyone. By the time I left, I probably had 2 friends. So I didn't make any friends. I was failing in school. I think I had a 2.1 GPA. That might be rounding up. It might have been a 1 point something. So doing terribly in school, feeling really isolated, feeling really alone, away from my family. I was really sad. It was a really, really hard time in my life. And it was at that point, it was really hard for me to admit that things weren't going well. And I remember coming home over the summer, and it was a month before school was supposed to start up. If I was supposed to transfer, I was supposed to do that a couple months ago. And I remember just breaking down to my mom and being I can't go back. Even if I have to take a year off, I cannot go back. I'm not enjoying it. I'm in a really bad spot. And my parents were super supportive and much love to them. And they're oh, that's totally fine. One, they're we'll probably save a lot of money. This is expensive school. And so I transferred then to the University of Minnesota. And, fast forward now, I think looking back on that experience, one, every time I'm feeling a little low or I'm having a struggle, I just go, oh, I've already been here and gotten through it and recovered so well. So it gave me a lot of resilience and confidence that if I'm up against something hard, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to get through it just like I got through that. The second thing it really gave me was, I think, an appreciation or a deeper perspective that, like, it's cliche, but you really don't know what other people are going through. And like up until that point, I'd been a really happy, outgoing, friendly, I had a ton of friends growing up person. And like, it really changed fast. And I think for a lot of people, they never would have like thought I was going through that. So it did, I think, give me a deep perspective, a lot more empathy when talking with other people that I think has served me tremendously well. And I think overall my takeaway is like, what was in the moment the worst thing that I felt like was happening to me? Like, if I could have waved a magic wand and gotten out of that situation, I would have waved it every single day. Now I look back on it and I'm genuinely grateful I went through it. And I think that's just such a powerful thing to experience, and to be genuinely grateful for something that wasn't that good in the moment. So that's been a really powerful reframe for me. It's given me a lot of perspective. That I think was my biggest failure thus far. What's your biggest failure?
Well, before we go into mine, I'm curious because you've moved out of your kind of area, right? Like the Midwest twice.
Yeah.
You moved to GW, that didn't work out, and then you moved to New York, and you've been here for what, 3 years?
Coming up on 5 years, yeah.
5 years, jeez Louise.
I don't know, my math
I don't know, that's wrong.
May
That's wrong.
2021. Coming up 4.5.
Yeah, 4.5 years.
Yeah.
This one stuck, right? So like, what do you feel? Do you feel like your failure allowed you to set yourself up for success on this time? Did you not really think about it?
Yeah.
Like, what was that experience?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a great follow-up question, and something, again, as for listeners, like learning from a failure and reflecting on it and not making the same mistake twice is really important, both professionally and personally. So I definitely think it did set me up for success moving to New York. Like, I knew, one, I was just a lot more mature and a lot more confident. Two, I went out of my way to like make friends, find that community so I didn't feel isolated. I think I got probably 50 coffees with 50 people in the first like year when I moved to New York. So I instantly had a network. I also was working at Morning Brew Learning, and you and other people were a big part of that, of like feeling like you have a connection and friends in the city. So definitely it did help me when I was faced with a similar situation, go about it in very different ways that produced a much better outcome. And, I'm thankful I had the failure earlier in my life. So when I got to it later in my life, I knew how to handle it. Yeah. So in that way, yes, it was really powerful guiding me in the future.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that's kind of exactly what you want, right? It's like, if you have the failure, you want to be able to think critically about why it happened and make sure that it doesn't in the future.
Yeah. Like, to not fail twice in the same way should be, I think, everyone's goal. You're going to fail the first time. Like, it's just going to happen if you're trying new things. But to take some time to self-reflect and not make that same mistake again in the future is really critical.
Yeah.
So enough about me. What's your biggest failure?
Well, so I wouldn't call this my biggest failure.
Please tell the world.
I wouldn't call this my biggest failure. I think I've had a series of, relatively big failures, but none of them felt like the big thing. Anyway, so here's one that I think has kind of a similar message, which is when I was my first year in work, I was working at a bank. I was doing financials, like I was covering financials. And about, let's say like 11 months in, my boss, who was really, really hard on me, he was super detail oriented.
Okay.
I was not. And so he would catch mistakes, and it was just like really hard on me. And it was like stuff like, for example, he liked to have a double space after every period in our research notes. And I never learned that. So I had to learn that by him correcting me over and over again and being like, why are you not?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, it was really weird. And I was like totally scarred forever after that. Yeah. But there was a ton of, other stuff. It's like it's a lot of numbers and you have to get them all exactly right.
You did know what you were getting into when you went into banking, though.
Yeah.
No. There's a bunch of numbers here.
Did not really know what I was getting into. But yeah. So it was really hard, and he was really hard on me. And about 11 months in, he said, I need somebody, I only get one person on my team because we were a smaller group. And I need somebody with an MBA with more experience. So you're going to transfer to Latin American retail, which was I was doing Latin American financials.
Okay.
And for me at that time, it was like a huge blow because I thought I was learning a lot and improving a lot. And I was starting to feel very confident in my work and very confident in my ability to perform. And so to hear that, I was like, shoot, I'm still failing. And like, it was so painful to hear. And the reality is like, it was fine. I think there's this feeling like I get knocked down and I get up twice. And like, that's the whole thing, is about how many times you get back up. But I think the reality is also, like, if you aren't a good fit for a team or for a person, like, there's no harm in like tapping out and being like, okay, I'm going to go to this next group and I'm going to like learn from my mistakes. And like, I didn't need to, like, the big like win wasn't, and then I went back and, my boss like loved me and I was great and it like worked out.
I started double spacing and everything changed.
So I think there's also this thing of like, okay, maybe this just wasn't like a good fit, and accepting that. I also ended up like a year later when I was leaving, reaching out to that boss, and he was one of my recommendations for the next one. And he was like, yeah, in hindsight, like, you did great. It's like, that's actually all I needed from him. So yeah, I guess it's not like a huge failure, but it was very impactful for me at the time.
Yeah, I think there's two themes to pull out from that story. The first is that I love how you're framing it as it's not a failure, it's just finding out about fit. And sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is for you to fail at something that you were never going to be exceptional at anyway. So you stop wasting your time doing that and go find something that's a much better fit where you can be exceptional. So it's kind of good that happened to you. The second thing is just like perspective and time. In both of our stories, something that felt very painful in the moment ended up being the best thing that could happen to us when you fast forward 5 years and look back on it. And I think it's important to remember that when you're going through something hard, that like in 5 years, this could actually be something that's quite powerful and helpful. The same way where like something that feels really good in the moment also might be not good long term. And so just to step back, kind of stay cool, calm, and collected and have some perspective, I think is really powerful when you're up against something that we're considering quote unquote a failure. Okay, now we've just shared our biggest failures with the world. So that's out of the way. We can move on to the next 4. I want to talk about identity outside of work and doing things outside of work that don't have you just thinking about work constantly, and also maybe able to translate some skills into the workplace. So I know that you have something pretty interesting here. Tell us about identity outside of work and how that's been impactful for you.
Yeah, I think the first few years of my career, I really was tied. My identity was tied to work, which is one of those reasons why that failure felt so painful to me. Because I was like, I'm the person that does hard work, that gets things done, that performs. And my second job outside of college, I had a very good, close group of friends. And one of the things that we started doing when the work experience started getting a little less positive, maybe, and it was a little harder for us at work, was we actually started writing a TV show together. And so the 3 of us would have like dedicated meetings after work where we would spend 2 or 3 hours like splitting a bottle of wine and writing. And this was especially important during the pandemic. We spent a lot of time doing that.
And that TV show, Abbott Elementary.
We didn't end up, so we wrote like 6 episodes. We wrote an entire first season, and we're like 3 pages short on the last episode. But then like things got better for us. We were able to like get different jobs, and like we were able to, I guess, decouple our identity from work. And so it was so important for me in that time when I was really struggling with the fact that I wasn't getting fulfillment at work, with like, then who am I? And so finding spaces where I could be creative or I could fill my cup up outside of work was one of the most important things that has happened to me in the past few years. And now I have, I think, an identity outside of work. And that doesn't make me work any less hard or get worse results. It just means that I'm like not exclusively who I am at work.
Yeah, you're probably more resilient too, because like if work isn't going well, you're not like absolutely a disaster.
Do you have any experiences?
What was the TV show about?
Okay, so it was basically
she lit up, folks.
It was really great. Basically, it was about these 4 women that worked at a tech startup that was super annoying, and they decided that they wanted to create a side hustle by writing a romance novel, a historical romance novel. And then it was like cutting between their real lives and like what they were writing that like suspiciously was very close to their real lives, just like Victorian era.
Yeah.
And so it was really fun to write. Like there was, we would do we got a Ouija board for fun, and then it was like cut with like a seance, like a Victorian era seance. It was like just a really fun way to be creative.
Yeah. So if you want Kaila to finish the show, which I do, per my last email at morningbrew.com.
Right,
Tell her how much we need the show to be completed. I mean, identity outside of work is a little tough for me. I do think that I get a lot of fulfillment from work, and it's a big part of my identity. I think my advice and how I've seen like not focusing on work all the time help me in unexpected ways professionally is that I think if you get too focused on only thinking about work, the content that you ingest gets really, really narrow.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like doing the same thing over and over and over again. So for people who are similar to me, where like maybe they do find a lot of fulfillment for work, they want to be excellent at their job, it's really easy to put on blinders. The most innovative people are able to apply analogies across domains. And in order to do that, you have to expand your content diet. You have to do other things outside of work, even if it means that there's a benefit to work, because now, oh, I had this experience. How do I apply that in my role? Oh, interesting. That's really innovative. Now I can be even better at my job. So I think people understand that if they want to get good at X, their role, they should only do X. When in reality, if you want to be good at X, of course you have to do X, but doing some Y and doing some Z allows you to connect the dots in really interesting ways. So I've seen that be very beneficial. I've done a lot of different jobs before I became chief of staff at Morning Brew. I think that makes me a better and not worse chief of staff because I have a lot more dots to pull into my current work stream.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
So let's just move on to number 3 because I really liked that as a wrap up.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't really give me an example, but that's fine. It's whatever.
Well, I also have a family. So
Yeah,
I'd say
that's a good one.
that probably takes up most of my time.
Yeah.
I can't write a TV show.
No, that's fair. So I think the next one is not necessarily being constrained by expectations, whether that's societal expectations or work expectations. Another way to put this is you can just do things.
You can just do things.
So-
Breaking news on today's podcast, you can just do things.
Kyle, would you like to tell us about how you just do things?
So one of my favorite interview questions when I'm interviewing people to join a team or join the company is, tell me about a time where you completed a project that absolutely no one told you to do. And what I'm looking for in this is like, do you have, let's say 0 to 1 energy? Mm-hmm. Do you have agency where you're like, yeah, no one told me to do this, but I was so excited, so inspired that like I wasn't waiting for permission. I just did it. And I think those are the people that you want to work with in your role. So in my own life, I've seen this happen. The first thing I did was I started this podcast right out of AmeriCorps. Mm. So after my first job, I was going to grad school and I was obsessed with podcasts. Mm-hmm. Like I've been listening to like stuff you should know since 2006 or whenever it first dropped. Like I was a podcast OG and I was like, I love podcasting. I want to make my own. The second is I was really interested in civic engagement. I was fresh off AmeriCorps. I was in Milwaukee. I was like, man, there's so much good you can do in your local community, but it feels like all of the news is focused nationally. Mm-hmm. There should be a resource of just people who want to make a difference in their community. And so I kind of combined those two passions with a friend of mine, and we started this podcast called Bridge the City, where we did just that. We interviewed school board members and like city council people and the governor, and it was all focused on Milwaukee and Wisconsin. And that was complete 0 to 1. Like was self-taught audio engineer. Mm. We had to buy all the equipment. The first interview we ever did was literally next to a window with cars zooming by. And the audio is like, hey, tell us about how to make a difference. And then they answer, but it's like, zoom, zoom. You can't even hear it. I'm like, so you have to learn through all of these failures. Yeah. But we produced an episode every single week for about 3 or 4 years straight. Mm-hmm. And like that gave me so much confidence that like, if there is something you want to do, like you really can just do it. The second is it doesn't need to be perfect. You continue iterating, you continue improving, and it just gives you all of these great skills. And so if you have never had a side hustle, a side project, like I think it's one of the best ways to 1, build skills, but 2, build confidence that carries into your professional life. So that was my first experience of like, holy shit, I can just do things. Mm-hmm. Do you have you can just do things type experience?
I do actually. Yeah. So I think that when I first moved to Jacksonville, I have such a strong memory of driving in. I had driven down from Ohio. I just bought my first car, drove down 14 hours. Yep. I'm exhausted. I'm starving. And I'm like driving around this very unfamiliar city. I'm
Okay.
with all my stuff in the back. And I'm like, oh my God, did I make a huge mistake?
Right.
And I was so stressed out. And I remember going to like this random strip mall and just finding a sushi place, and it was completely empty.
That sounds like Jacksonville.
Devoid of any like life. And I just sat there and like cried into my sushi.
No.
And I was like, this was the worst decision I've ever made. But I'm stuck because like the expectations of me are that I am going to like be in finance. And so I remember feeling like the worst, honestly, I felt in a long time. Again, I was 22, so like everything was like the worst I've ever felt. But then I started to work, and obviously I made friends and I met my husband, and like things like started getting easier. But I still wanted to get out of Jacksonville. And I was like, the only way that I can leave Jacksonville is if my company transfers me up to New York. And so I was like trying all these avenues of like, this is how it's done. And I was like, wait a second, I can just like apply to places in New York. Like there's just like, I can just do whatever I don't have to like figure out the secret way to get up there. Yeah. And so I just changed my address on my resume to a Chipotle in the West Village. And like got the first job that I applied to using that strategy.
Yeah. It's such a good, I've never heard of that before until you've told me this. And I was like, that is such a good strategy.
Right. Because at least back then people were thinking, I'm going to have to pay for this person to move. I'm going to have to pay for a signing bonus, whatever.
Or they looked up your address and they were like, she's living in a Chipotle. Like, you got to help this poor girl out. Give her a job.
So it was just like, you can just like, you don't have to wait to have things happen to you. Mm-hmm. Like you can just do them. And yeah, this was work related, but I think this applies everywhere.
Yeah. And once you have, I think like the key here is once you have one of those experiences, it kind of unlocks a whole new set of experiences and a whole new mindset that you approach life with that I think is a lot more proactive and a lot more powerful.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Let's move on to number 4, which is about kind of getting a multicultural experience to be able to understand that like your one way of living is not the way that everyone goes about living. I know you've had some really cool experiences here, so tell us about that.
Yeah, I think there's this is one of those ones where it's like outside of work, like it's such a formative experience, and I think everyone has had it, whether it's small or large, where you're like, you realize that your experience is so different from somebody else's. And that doesn't necessarily have to be multicultural. It could also be like your next door neighbor and you're like, oh my gosh, like they've been living so differently than me and I had no idea. They come to our friendship with a completely different set of experiences. Yeah. So for me, I have a few, but the one that I think was the most formative is I studied abroad in Brazil, in São Paulo, and I did a year there. My second semester, I was getting much more fluent in Portuguese, and I was at a business school, and part of the requirement for my international business program at Tulane was I had to work my second semester. So it was like 10 hours a week requirement, and basically I was volunteering at the World Trade Center in Brazil, and my job was to communicate with other World Trade Centers around the world. To talk about business opportunities. And because
That's sick.
It was really cool. And I was one of the only people that spoke both English and Portuguese semi-fluently. So I was doing a lot of translation. I was talking to other, World Trade Center people in English and then translating that to Portuguese for my colleagues. That part was great. What I didn't realize was like how different our cultures were, even that far into my study abroad experience. I'd already been living there for like 5 months. And I realized I came from a direct culture. My culture is, I have a problem with you. Maybe I'm not perfect at this, but I have a problem with you. I'm probably going to say it. Or if I disagree with something, I'm probably going to say it. Mm-hmm. In Brazil, and at least in this office that I was in, that was not the case at all. So I was like, gosh, like I'm really trying to get something done and it's like not happening. And it turns out like I was just trying to be super direct and they were so thrown off by me. And it was like only once I started like integrating myself into their friend groups and becoming closer with the actual individuals. We were having like 3 beer lunches and I was like, is this cool? Like,
sign me up.
Are we cool? And it was like, we were not talking about business, but business was getting done because on our way up in the elevator, they'd be like, yeah, I'll get that thing for you. Mm-hmm. And so that was really, really shocking to me. And I came back from that experience being like, there is so much that I don't know about how to interact with other people. Yeah. And it allowed me to figure out that like the way that I view the right way to get things done in business is not necessarily the way that it's going to get done. And so that, like, I learned how adaptable I can be, how adaptable I might need to be, and like how important understanding another person's point of view is to getting your work done.
Yeah, and I think what's powerful about this is like it doesn't even need to be in the context of like international business.
Yeah.
It can be in the context of your current company, understanding that your boss, your coworkers might have a different communication style. And so assuming they're going to have the same communication style as you is typically a fool's errand. And understanding like, no, if we want to achieve this, I have to deploy this strategy that caters to their needs. So I think having some sort of experience like you've illuminated allows you to understand that and then use it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it has been one of the most beneficial experiences.
And you found out about pain de cajou. Am I saying that right?
No, not at all. That's fine.
What is it?
It's pain de cajou. It's like a cheese bread.
Well, look this up. They're fire.
They're really good.
Kaila,
and you can get them at Trader Joe's.
That's not even a paid plug. Just go to Trader Joe's.
What about you? Have you had any multicultural experiences?
Well, I haven't been in World Trade Centers communicating with other World Trade Centers, but I farmed in Europe for 3 months. I don't know if I learned anything about business, but I had a hell of a
Farms
time.
like with an F.
Farmed with an F.
Like milked cows and
Milked
stuff.
cows. Yeah, I was on 4 farms with my best friend and then random families that we literally had to email.
This was
and just
woofing, right?
Yeah, it was woofing. So I planted vegetables. I tended to an olive grove. I did beekeeping.
That's so sick. Did you get stung?
Milked a cow. I did not get stung.
Okay.
A baby cow was born while we were there, which was awesome.
Okay.
And so like, I don't have some sexy lesson for business besides it was a really good time and you should definitely go do that. Maybe the one thing is it kind of goes back to like, you can just do things. This was not like a study abroad that the school supported. This was not a job that sent me there. This was literally me and my friend saying, it would be awesome to go to Europe, but we don't want to have to pay a lot.
Yeah.
So like, how do we get there and then get free living? And we just Googled that and they were like, if you farm through this program, they host you.
Right.
And they give you food and you get to meet local people. We're like, bet, let's do that. And did it. And it was definitely the most fun of any trip I've ever had in my entire life. And so, yeah, if anything, it just reinforces this idea that you really can just go do things. And sometimes you get to milk a cow when it's all said and done.
That is so wild. I feel like that's totally useful in business, though. You're like, yeah, I tended to olive groves. I can handle this conversation.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is useful in business is whenever you start a new job, they go, so what's a fun fact about you? And if you're anything like me, the second they say that, your mind goes completely blank. And you're like, motherfucker, I don't have any
like
fun
I'm
facts
not fun at all, actually.
So I hit him with the milk the cow, helped a cow give birth story.
That's gnarly.
And, that normally is a pretty good fun fact.
Yeah, that is fun.
Should we go to the last one?
Yes,
here?
let's do it. So this one is maybe a little bit more obvious when it comes to the impact to business, but I am curious what your thoughts are on maybe like unexpected networking and how that has impacted your career.
Yeah, I think my overall take here, we've covered this a lot, and I think people undervalue just how radically like cool it is that you are a few right clicks of keyboard buttons away from basically reaching anyone on the planet. And there's so much like asymmetric upside in doing that. The downside is you send an email and no one responds to you. You send a LinkedIn message and no one responds to you. The downside is like basically you waste 10 minutes.
Yep.
The upside is you get connected to a future boss, a future job, one of your heroes. Like it's basically infinite upside. And so when you find an asymmetry like that, you should be exploiting it so much. And I don't think enough people do this. So a few examples of my life. I read the book Range. It had a massive impact on me. It's my favorite book. I reference it too many times. Kayla's got like daggers in her eyes.
I'm so sick of Range, but it's a great book. Yeah.
It's a great book. And I feel like so many times we experience art that's really impactful to us and we never reach out to the person that created it saying, thank you. And that's exactly what I did. I literally emailed David Epstein cold and was like, I love this book. Thank you so much for creating it. Like, here's how it impacted my life. He responded to me. And this has been, I wouldn't call it a friendship, but like I go back and forth with David now. And how this helped me professionally, we've interviewed him at Morning Brew Learning. We're going to have him on this podcast, Breaking News, when his new book comes out in May. And that's been a really rewarding friendship for me, all through the power of cold email and networking. The second is I got cold emailed from this guy named Chuck Svoboda, who's the former CEO of Cree, who ended up being my boss at Marquette University. He was going to be an innovator in residence. And that was because I was putting Bridge the City out into the world. And so often when you're creating your own projects, people recognize those. They might inbound you, reach out to you, and you unlock a ton of opportunities. And the last example I'll give is we wanted to interview Claire Hughes Johnson, former CEO of Stripe, for Morning Brew Learning in the past. Another cold email. She said yes. She came on the podcast, or came on our show we had for Morning Brew Learning, and it was a really powerful conversation. And like the reason I bring up Claire Hughes Johnson again, former CEO of Stripe, is that you would never know the people that you would never expect to respond sometimes do, particularly if it's heartfelt, if it's sincere, if you're making like specific and short asks to that person. And so I just think this power of networking, it's so we talk about it too much, but we do it not enough. And so that would just be my one call out to listeners is like, you should be sending way more cold emails, way more cold DMs to people that you genuinely admire, and they will actually respond back to you.
I really like that because I think it's highlighting the beneficial of like being proactive there. I think that a lot of times we view that networking is a little bit more passive. Like it's, I go to this event,
exactly,
I mingle, and a job is bestowed upon me. But I think something that you do really well is that you are very proactive, and you're like, this is also like, you can just do things. You're like, well, why wouldn't I just, call them up? Like, Tim Cook, let's send him an email.
That's true. Me and Tim Cook are very close personally. Yeah.
But I think that that's something that you do very well that I'm still a little scared of, but I think it has had a huge impact on you.
Why are you scared of it?
Well, we've talked about this in the past. It's just like, I put all this effort in, and then like this person doesn't respond. Like, fuck you, actually.
You could put that like, P.S. If you don't respond, I hate you. I will now be hating you and burning your book.
Right. Yeah. So I just don't think I really. I remember like I cold DM'd somebody that I knew personally, and
that's called a warm.
Well,
DM.
whatever. I was like,
called a personal text.
I was like an intern for like 3 weeks at a company, and she was my boss, and now she's this like big VC person, and I reached out to her like, would love to have you come talk to Morning Brew Learning, and she never responded, and I was like, what the hell, like.
Yeah. You're gonna put shots on goal, and you're not gonna get a response. But again, my point is the downside is zero. Like life goes on. You have like an interesting.
So I think if you were talking about proactivity for you, I think mine is more reactivity.
Yeah.
So like I went to a conference specifically focused on women in the workplace. And this was a long time ago. This was pre-pandemic during Uber pool era.
Yeah.
And so one of the options for a perk was if you go to this, it was in the heart of Brooklyn or whatever, you can take an Uber pool on the conference. So I did. And the person who happened to get into the Uber with me was also going to the conference. So we were kind of quiet for a while, and then we started talking.
Yeah.
And then we sat next to each other at the conference, and then we were like chatting and mingling and whatever. She ended up knowing somebody who was looking for the position that I was trying to get at my future role. She introduced me to that person. That person ended up being a very dear mentor for a really long time. And actually, I was deciding between a job that she helped me get and Morning Brew. And so it was like really a huge unlock for me, both for understanding what it is that I wanted to do next, having those conversations with people that were far more successful than I was, very like inspirational. It was very, very cool for me. And for me, it was like, we get so in our bubble, right? You even mentioned like you're a few clicks away from anyone you want. You potentially, yes, but the reality is like your circle is small.
Yeah.
And I think when you open yourself up to
open yourself up to the universe.
To like any like serendipity, I think it's actually, you'd be surprised what good things come your way.
Yeah,
so
totally agree.
I think when you're talking about proactivity, I think it's opening yourself up to like what good thing could happen. And I think in the reactive way, it's also like what opportunities could come my way by just like talking to somebody in line or like having a conversation with a random person. And then being willing to seize those opportunities. I think for both of us, it's like whether you're proactive or reactive, you then need to act on the opportunities that come your way because of those decisions.
Yeah. A few reactions. One is Dara, CEO of Uber. Bring back Uber Pool, man. Come on. What happened to that?
Yeah.
2 is I'm glad you chose Morning Brew over this other job.
Me too.
turns out the Uber ride wasn't that good because
It's true.
Kayla didn't
It's
choose
true.
you. No,
Yep.
I'm kidding. And then the third is we kind of ended on some like manifestation vibes.
Oh, okay.
You know, I like it. Like,
Be the change you want to see or whatever.
those are the 5 unexpected experiences that'll help you grow in your career.
Do you have any? Are we missing
What are we
some?
missing?
Please send us an email at permylastemail@morningbrew.com.
And while you're there, rate the show 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Kayla, let's roll the credits.
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Ogu.
Brittany DeTaco is our audio engineer.
And our president is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Have some unexpected experiences.